Warning, this video contains flashing and flickering lights. Welcome back into the Bangtan universe wormhole. This video is part of a series exploring the gorgeous but notoriously confusing Wings era. And we do need to explore it because Wings is part of the BU. In fact, it tells stories about the characters that you won't find anywhere else. You might need some help to understand them, but that's why I'm here. My name is Karen, and I'm a former English teacher with specialized knowledge of art, mythology, and theology, so I can guide you through the Wings era. In this video, we'll be looking at J-Hope's short film, Mama, and I have a special treat for you with this one. The Mama short film contains a bunch of Easter eggs, including screen grabs and explanations of every subliminal image in the blue light scenes, and a hilariously bold spoiler in the Mama lyrics. But before we get started, you need to know one thing: the overall storyline of the BU. If you're new to the Bangtan universe, then you need to watch this video before you try to understand Wings. From here on out, I'll assume you are up to date on the BU, so let's get on with it. If you've been following this series for any length of time, you already know how important it is to know a bit about the novel Demian. So if you do know a bit about Demian, you can skip this section and go on to the next section, which is titled The Quote. Otherwise, please pause this video and read the brief explanation I've provided before you move on. At the beginning of each short film, RM reads a quote from Demian that sets up the storyline. The Mama short film begins with Sinclair finally meeting Demian's mama. I've mentioned her in some of the other Wings videos, but this is the first time we actually meet her in the book. This is how she appears to Sinclair. With a face that resembled her son's, timeless, ageless, and full of inner strength, the beautiful woman smiled with dignity. Her gaze was fulfillment, her greeting a homecoming. Silently, I stretched my hands out to her. This is the perfect introduction to a short film about Hoseok's character, since he still hopes his mother will return to him with a smiling face and outstretched arms. It would be natural, of course, for him to still feel pain over her loss or to miss her deeply. But Hoseok is 20 years old now, and he's still convinced that she might return at any time. The short film Mama gives us a deeper look at his psychology. As the short film begins, we see Hoseok lying in a padded cell, apparently unconscious. And right away, we have a couple of things to talk about. First, notice that his pajamas are a reversed version of Jimin's pajamas from Lie. Later in the video, we'll see a reversed clip from Jimin's video. The second thing you should notice is the padded cell itself. Hoseok has never harmed himself or anyone else, so why is he in here? The answer is that he harms himself psychologically, and in the symbolic world of this short film, that's enough to justify the padded cell. Soon a doctor looks in on him and fills out a patient information sheet. Basically, it shows that Hoseok is healthy in every way physically, but psychologically, Hoseok has significant issues. His mood is anxious and irritable, and his thinking is illogical and, well, I'm not going to repeat that word. I'll just explain that in this context, it doesn't mean Hoseok has an intellectual disability. It means his thought processes don't match his age. And that's precisely because he still thinks his mother is going to come back for him. In fact, during an overnight hospital stay, he mistakes a stranger for his mother and runs after her. When she enters the stairwell, he follows, but he slips on the steps and falls hard, breaking his leg very badly. Seokjin undoes the accident with his time traveling, but in the Love Yourself era, Hoseok begins to imagine that his dance partner, a girl he's known for most of his life, looks like his mother, so his issue is still present at that point. Now let's look at Hoseok's diagnosis, Munchausen syndrome. A person with this condition intentionally exaggerates or makes up symptoms for attention, sympathy, and/or medical treatment. For instance, Hoseok tells everyone he has narcolepsy. He even says that to us, the readers, in the May 10th entry of the Notes Book 1. We don't find out he's lying about that until he confesses the truth to Jimin. Hoseok does pass out sometimes, but it's not due to narcolepsy. It's due to the intense stress he feels when he remembers how his mother abandoned him. So, since the doctor knows Hoseok doesn't have narcolepsy or anything else, he prescribes placebos. Lots and lots of placebos. But the next scene shows us that the fake medicine is just as bad for Hoseok as the wrong medicine would be. Hoseok's doctors are just as bad as Jimin's doctors. None of them care at all about their patient's recovery. That's why Jimin lied and said he didn't remember what had happened at the Arboretum, and here in Mama, Hoseok lies too. We thought he was unconscious at the beginning of this video, but the moment we hear the doctor's footsteps move away, he sits upright. He was faking narcolepsy again just to get more pills. Hoseok might or might not guess the pills are placebos, and it doesn't matter for him anyway, since what he really wants is attention and treatment. Unfortunately, what he needs is therapy. We get the callback to Jimin's video when Hoseok swallows his first pill. This cocktail glass with pills falling into it is a reversed clip of this snippet from Jimin's short film. And it's also a visual pun, because the many different kinds of pills make it look like Hoseok is taking what's called a drug cocktail. And if you look closely, you'll see a red pill in the mix. This is a reference to the red pills in the MV for No that were meant to keep the boys obedient. Seokjin has red pills too in the BTS Begins VCR, where they symbolize his obedience to the principal. Next, we get the eye close-up, which is present in most of the Wings short films. Here we see an image of Abraxas, which comes straight out of Taeyoung's short film Stigma. This is just a clearer version that shows us the whole piece of graffiti. Notice the sun and moon at the top. They add more weight to the idea we presented in this video, that our 7 heroes are represented by 7 celestial bodies, with Taeyoung being the sun and Seokjin being the moon. You can also see the word wing written here as a nice nod to the album. But the real reason we're seeing this image in Hoseok's eye is that Hoseok will be Taeyoung's mentor in the Wings era. And now the quote-unquote normal lights go out and the black light comes on. This is the signal for us to enter Hoseok's unconscious mind, and there's an interesting reason why black light is that signal. Like a lot of things in the BU, the idea starts with BTS's favorite psychotherapist, Carl Jung. Jung identified a number of symbols that are common in people's thoughts, dreams, and waking lives, as well as in stories that hit home for us, including the BU, of course. One interesting thing about the symbols Jung identified is that they represent the same things almost everywhere they appear. Now, there are a lot of Jungian symbols, and the most important ones, which almost all of us encounter in one way or another, are called archetypes. And Jung connected a particular color to each of the archetypes. This is where Jungian symbolism connects to Hoseok's short film. Jung wrote that blue and ultraviolet represent the influence of archetypes. And in case you aren't aware, black light is ultraviolet light. So, since an ultraviolet light has just switched on in the video, we're about to see the Jungian symbols and archetypes at work in Hoseok's mind. At the start of this video, I promised to show you all the subliminal images in the black light section, and here's the first one. It's hard to make out except when it flickers, so excuse me for leaving it flickering while I talk about it. Most BU theorists think this is an image of a mother holding her child, just like the painting we'll see at the end of this short film. Our next subliminal image is a bunch of eyes surrounding Hoseok, plus a couple of feathers blowing against his chest. According to Jung, eyes represent knowledge, consciousness, and the unconscious. Well, the whole Wings era is about gaining knowledge, and right now we're looking at Hoseok's unconscious mind, so that fits. Meanwhile, feathers relate to the Wings era in general and have a special significance for Hoseok and Jimin. The next image looks a lot like the text flowing up Namjoon's arm in his short film. I still can't read any of it, but I'm betting it's from Demian, and some or all of it might be in German. Anyway, I can talk to you about arrows, and that part is very interesting. Jung had a lot of different ideas about arrows, but this is the one that fits Hoseok best. If you're wounded by your own arrows, for instance in a dream you have, it means you're turning away from the world and turning inward toward the world of your childhood and even your infancy. Now let's talk about the color of those arrows. Yellow is associated with one of Jung's most powerful archetypes, the wise woman. She shows up in stories and dreams as a mature or elderly woman who is a kind, compassionate healer and teacher, a description which perfectly fits Demian's mother. But don't forget that the wise woman, or wise man, is just an archetype. You might or might not have met a real-life wise woman or man to guide you on your journey in life, but if you didn't, you probably found healing and knowledge in some other way, for instance, through a character in a book or movie who functioned as a wise woman or wise man. Obi-Wan Kenobi is a famous example. The next image looks a lot like this cover of the book Demian. The long, curling, spiraling shapes are hair, and in Jungian symbolism, hair represents an extension of the self, particularly personal identity, power, and connection to the unconscious self. So everything we've seen so far tells us that Hoseok is struggling to gain knowledge in the midst of chaos, just like most of us do at this stage of life. But Hoseok's struggle includes letting go of his fantasy that his mother will return. She might, but she probably won't. So he needs to let her go and seek comfort, healing, and knowledge from other people in his life. The next image is the easiest to interpret since this whole era is called wings. All 7 boys are developing their wings right now, meaning that they're becoming more mature and independent, gaining knowledge and working toward individuation. The image after this one is hard to make out because Hoseok is being bombarded with more information than he can handle. In fact, the wavy lines behind him might represent the thoughts and emotions radiating outward from him because his head has no room to contain them anymore. Alternately, they could represent a giant long-haired woman who's looming behind him, which could be his own mother, who's always weighing on his mind. She's an example of the archetype of the negative mother, a mother who does not take care of her children and might abuse or abandon them like his mother did. But it's impossible to say what this image is because all the images are fading away now into smears of paint. But notice that the final image is in colors that we usually associate with infrared cameras. I already told you about blue and ultraviolet, and now I'll tell you about red and infrared. Red represents urges, and infrared represents instincts prompted by physical and chemical conditions. This is another clue that everything in Hoseok is screaming to get out of this vision. So he starts throwing himself against the padded cell, tearing at the walls, and coming away with handfuls of feathers and pills stuck together by paint. And then finally, to his relief, I'm sure, he passes out for real. He starts to wake up at 1 minute and 46 seconds, and since that's a special timestamp in all the short films, his waking up here must be a big deal. We can definitely see that his experience in the cell left a mark on him, literally. It's on the cell walls too, and he's torn right through them in some places. But even if his vision has given him a breakthrough of some sort, he isn't healed yet. We'll have proof of that in just a minute. Hoseok peeks out the little slot in his cell, and I'll turn on the volume for a moment so you can hear what he hears. He seems to be looking at Jimin's arboretum, but Jimin would never connect sunshine and birdsong with that place, and Hoseok doesn't know Jimin's secret anyway, so he can't really see that arboretum the way Jimin does. Now that Hoseok has had a proper meltdown and slept it off, he probably feels refreshed, like he's awakened to a sunny new day. Now notice that when he leaves the padded cell, which wasn't locked because it was never real, only a symbol, that cell has the same shape as Namjoon's container. So since the container was Namjoon's home, this padded cell represents Hoseok's home. He lives inside his head, but it's getting pretty uncomfortable in there. He sighs happily, judging by the quote, which translates, "Because the sky is blue and the sun is shining." But this line comes from "I Need You," and that title fits his own situation perfectly, right? Then later on in "I Need You," we get the line, "Why do I keep needing you when I know I'll get hurt?" Keep that in mind as he pulls out a Snickers bar from his pocket. That's his go-to means of comforting himself, because his mother left him with a Snickers bar when she left him. So eating the Snickers takes him back to the time just before she left, the time when he was still certain that she'd return. In other words, he's returning to that illogical, immature thinking that the doctor noted on his patient information sheet. And just in case you missed it, let me run this bit of the clip again. When Hoseok pulled the Snickers bar out of his pocket, several pills spilled out too. But he had no interest at all in catching them. This proves yet again that the placebos are useless, and that he really needs therapy from a kind, caring doctor. He needs a wise woman or man who can help him heal. And you know what? He met a man like that when he left Songju during Notes 1. It was the injured dancer who reignited Hoseok's love for dance. But back to the Snickers bar. Here's another interesting note. At the beginning of the BTS Begins VCR, we saw Hoseok eating a Snickers bar as he strolled towards school, and the sign on the bridge behind him pointed the way to the Arboretum. It's amazing to think about how thoroughly the BU was planned out before Big Hit even released I Need You. This Arboretum sign is proof that Hoseok and Jimin were paired up from the start. But you might be wondering why this Wings era short film focused mostly on Hoseok's Magne from the HYYH era. And if you think about it, all the short films have focused on the HYYH pairings. They've predicted new pairings for the Wings era, but they haven't given us any scenes of the new pairings. Well, don't worry, you'll see everything you could want to see when we get to Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Speaking of which, I'll be starting work on those videos in a week or two, so please leave me some comments about what you'd like for me to cover. I've already hinted that when Hoseok stepped out of his cell, he didn't really see Jimin's Arboretum. The painting was never real anyway. It was just a symbol, like everything else in the Wings short films. The Arboretum hung over Jimin's head literally in the video because it hangs over his head metaphorically in his character's real life. And this is what hangs over Hoseok's head, the idea of a loving mother with her son. And that name in the corner? Ava. That's the name of Demian's mother. And one more thing, an inverted version of this image showed up in Taeyoung's eye during the Stigma short film. In all my other Wings short films, I provided translations of the lyrics right up front. But in the case of Mama, I held off until now for a reason. J-Hope wrote this song as a tribute to his real mother, a wonderful woman who supported him in his chosen career right from the start. She even took 2 jobs to make sure that he had the money to take the classes he needed. That means the song Mama doesn't relate to the BU, but it does have the best BU Easter egg of all time. 2 years before BTS released Euphoria, the song which more or less confirmed theorists' ideas about the secret behind the BU, Hobi very deliberately spoiled it all in the first line of Mama. I'm giving you a screen grab this time instead of copying the English translation of the lyrics because I want you to see that not only did Hobi spoil the secret, but he spoiled it in English so that all armies around the world could understand it. But if anyone else noticed what he did, I haven't heard from them. And if you haven't heard about this spoiler from anyone else, allow me the honor of showing it to you. Ta-da! Now that I've mentioned Ava's name, you won't be surprised to see that Hoseok's circle is that name, written over and over. It combines with Taeyoung's circle, which was cut apart to represent what he did to his father, and the result is this. But what is it? I believe it's the combination of Taeyoung's graffiti and the splashes of paint from Hoseok's cell. And it's dripping because the paint hasn't dried yet for either of them. That dripping paint also foreshadows something you're going to see in Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And you probably know what I'm talking about because I'm sure you've watched that video on your own. So now it's your turn to tell us what you think. Please drop a comment below and give us your thoughts on the video. Does my interpretation make sense or do you have a different one? How about any questions or anything you want to ask me or anything you want me to address in the upcoming videos? Finally, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. That helps us get noticed by the YouTube algorithm, which helps you find our latest content. Apo Bangpo!